Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Okay. Boom. So first, I just want to say, don't look at my eyelashes because if you do, you're being disrespectful. Because I'm getting them done today. So don't even say nothing to me. Second of all, I just want to say good morning. Um, y'all, I posted about me making videos, so I don't know if we're gonna join. I actually felt weird posting about it, but remember, like a couple days ago, I said I'm gonna post. I never did, but I actually did post. I just took it down. Whatever. Anyway, so today we're on. Today we're on day 16 of the reading challenge. So we're gonna be starting off in Joshua. We'll be reading Joshua 1 through 14. Period. And you know what I just realized? I just realized, like, when we were reading, and I would say like 1 through 14, I was saying 1 through 15, so we're reading an extra chapter. So hopefully they're like, the videos are a little bit shorter. Anyway, so we're gonna be reading 1 through 14, Joshua. So this is day 16. I'm gonna be reading Joshua 1 through 14. Cool. All right. So these are the historical books that we're starting. We went through. I don't even know how to pronounce his words, but I want to try it. The Penta. Let me not try. The Pentateuch. I don't know. All I know was now we're in the historical books. Cool. Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready? I wonder, do I want to like? Okay, hold on. I'm gonna put a bookmark where we're gonna end because I'll be cheating anyway, trying to see where we're gonna end. Anyway, let's get it. So it says the Lord commands Joshua. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all of these people ready to cross the Jordan River into the land that I am about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place that you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon and from the great river of the Euphrates, all the Hittite country to the great sea on the west. No one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, I will also be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. Be strong and be very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right nor to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Do not let this book of law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you to be strong and courageous? Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So Joshua ordered the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, get your supplies ready. 3 days from now, you will cross to the Jordan River and go in to take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you to own. But the Reubenites and the Jedites and the half tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember the command that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you. The Lord your God has given you rest and has granted you this land. Your wives, your children, your livestock may stay in this land that Moses gave you east of the Jordan. But all your fighting men, fully armed, must cross over ahead of your brothers. You are to help your brothers until the Lord gives them rest, as he's done for you, until they have too taken possession of the land that the Lord your God has given them. After that, you may go back and occupy your own land, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you east of the Jordan towards the sunrise. Then they answered Joshua, whatever you commanded us, we will do, and wherever you send us, we'll go. Just as we fully obeyed Moses, which they didn't, so we will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your word and does not obey your words, whatever you may command them, will be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. So I want to go back and repeat and take notice to Verse 8, it says, "Do not let this book of law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it, and then you will be prosperous and successful." So we have to make sure that we have to make sure like this that we're in the word, that we're reading the Bible, because when we know the word, then we can actually do the things that God wants us to do, because we know what God wants us to do. We know how God wants us to handle different situations that we're in. I feel that every situation that we come across is in the Bible. So as we read the Bible and we meditate on it and we think about it, the word will come into our hearts. So we'll know what to do to be prosperous and successful. So read the word daily. Meditate on it. Think about it. Talk about it, etc. Cool. Chapter 2. Rahab and the spies. Then Joshua son of Nun secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim, "Go look up over the land, especially Jericho." So they went and they entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab, sorry, and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, "Look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land." So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab: "Bring out the men who came to you into your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land." But the woman had taken these 2 men and hidden them. She said, "Yes, the men came, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, the men left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You may catch up with them." But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of the flax she laid out on the roof. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of the Jordan. As soon as the pursuers heard Ghana, the gate was shut. Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up to the roof and said to them, "I know that the Lord has given this land to you, and that is a great fear for you. That the great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the waters of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, and the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, who you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and above and below earth. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and my mother, my brothers and sisters, and all that belong to them, and that you will save us from death. Our lives for your lives," the men assured. "If you don't tell what we're doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land." So she let them down by a rope through the window, for the house she lived in was part of the city wall. Now she said to them, "Go to the hills, and the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourself there for 3 days until they return, then go on your way." The men said to her, "This oath you made us will surely not be binding on us unless we enter the land. You have tied this scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and unless you brought your father and mother and your brothers and all your family into the house. If anyone goes outside the house on the street, his blood will be on his own head. We will not be responsible. As for anyone who is in this house with you, his blood will be on our head if a hand is laid on him. But if you tell what we are doing, we will be released from the oath that you made us swear." "Agreed," she replied. "Let it be as you say." So she sent them away, and they departed, and she tied the scarlet cord on the window. When they left and went into the hills, they stayed there 3 days until the pursuers had searched all along the road and returned without finding them. Then the 2 men started back, and they went down to the hills, forded the river, and came back to Joshua son of Nun, and told him everything that happened. And they said to Joshua, "The Lord surely given the whole land into our hands. All the people are melting in fear because of us." Man, God can use anybody. They were just saved by a prostitute, so Rahab. So right now I'm just putting that Rahab is a prostitute living in the city's wall. So not only is she rejected, but she's also like removed, not so much isolated, but she's removed from everyone else because she's in the wall of the city. And the city's like in here in the walls, you know. So she's removed from the city, but even in her sinning and even in, her kind of isolation, God was still able to find her and speak to her. And so I think that it just shows us that we have to be open to receive a word from anybody, and we have to be we have to understand that God can use anybody to give us a word and to save us and to, you know, prophesy over us. God can use anybody. Um, so I'm just gonna write that. Crossing the Jordan. Early in the morning, Joshua and all of the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God and the priests who are the Levites carrying it, you are to move out of your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. But keep a distance about 1,000 yards between you and the ark, and do not go near it. Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. Joshua said to the priests, take up the ark of the covenant and pass on ahead of the people. So they took it up and went ahead of them. And the Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of Israel, so they may know that I am with you as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the ark of the covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan waters, to go and stand in the river. Joshua said to the Israelites, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that the living God is among you, and that he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Jershites, Amorites, and Jebusites. These are all the people that they're about to drive out. Okay. See, the ark of the covenant of the Lord in the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you. Now then, choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. And as soon as the priests who carry the ark of the Lord of all earth, set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand up in a heap. So when the Lord broke camp across the Jordan, the priests carrying the ark of the covenant went ahead of them. Now the Jordan is at flood stage, all harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan, their feet touched the water's edge, and the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap in a great distance away in a town called Adam in the vicinity of Zerathon, while the water was flowing down to the sea of Araba, which is the Salt Sea. It was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite of Jericho. The priests who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, while all Israel passed until the whole nation had completed crossing on dry ground. So it wasn't just the story of Moses where the Lord stopped water. Period. Then the whole nation finished crossing the Jordan. We're in chapter 4 now. When the whole nation finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, choose 12 men from among the people, one of each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, right from where the priest stood, and carry them over with you to put them down where you will stay tonight. So Joshua called 12 men he appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and said to them, go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder according to the number of tribes of Israel, to serve as a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. So the Israelites did what Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, as the Lord told Joshua, and they carried them over with them to their camp, where they put them down. Joshua set up 12 stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priests who had carried the ark of the covenant had stood, and they are there to this day. Now the priests who carried the ark remained standing in the middle of the Jordan until evening, as the Lord commanded Joshua was done by the people. just as Moses had directed Joshua. The people hurried over as soon as all of them had crossed the ark of the Lord, and the priest came to the other side where the people watched. The men of Reuben, Gad, and half tribe of Manasseh crossed over armed in front of the Israelites as Moses had directed them. About 40,000 armed for battle crossed over before the Lord in the plains of Jericho for war. That day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of Israel, and they revered him all the days of his life as they revered Moses. I think it's revered. No, y'all know. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Command the priest carrying the ark of the testimony to come out of the Jordan." So Joshua commanded the priest come up out of the Jordan. And the priest came up out of the river carrying the ark of the covenant of the Lord. No sooner had they set their feet on dry land, the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and ran at flood stage as before. On the 10th day of the first month, the people went up from the Jordan and camped at Gilgal, I don't know, on the eastern border of Jericho. And Joshua set up on Gilgal the 12 stones they had taken out of Jordan. He said to the Israelites, "In the future, when your descendants ask their fathers, 'What do the stones mean?' Tell them that the Israelites crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan just as what he would have done to the Red Sea when he dried it up before us until we crossed over. He did this so that all the people of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you may always find fear in the Lord your God." I don't know. We kind of flowing here. We kind of flowing. I don't even think I want to take a little break. We flowing. Anyway, now we have the circumcision at Gilgal. Now, when the Amorite kings west of the Jordan and all the Canaanite kings along the coast heard about how the Lord had dried up the Jordan before the Israelites until they crossed over, their hearts melted, and they no longer had the courage to face the Israelites. At that time, the Lord said to Joshua, "Make flint knives and circumcise the Israelites again." So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the Israelites at Jabesh Haraloth. Now, this is why he did so. All of those who came out of Egypt, all the men of the military age, died in the desert on the way after leaving Egypt. All the people that came out had been circumcised, but all the people born into the desert during the journey from Egypt had not. The Israelites had moved about in the desert for 40 years until all the men who were of military age when they left Egypt had died, since they had not obeyed the Lord. For the Lord had sworn to them that they would not see the land that he solemnly promised their fathers, and to give us a land full of milk and honey. So he raised up their sons in their place, and these were the ones that Joshua circumcised. They were still uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way. And after the whole nation had been circumcised, they remained where they were in the camp until they were healed. Then the Lord said to Joshua, Today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you." So this place had been called Gilgal to this day. On the evening of the 14th day of the month, while camped there on the plains of Jericho, the Israelites celebrated the Passover. The day after Passover, that very day, they ate some of the produce of the land, unleavened bread and roasted grain. The manna stopped the day after they ate the food from the land. There was no longer any manna for the Israelites, but that year they ate produce of Canaan. Now this is titled The Fall of Jericho. Now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you for us or against us?" "Neither," he replied, "but as a commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come." Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, "What message does my Lord have for his servant?" The commander of the Lord's army replied, "Take off your sandals, for this is where you are standing is holy." Just like Moses. Just saying. Now Jericho was tightly shut up because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "See that I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and his fighting men. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have all the people give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse, and the people will go up, and every man straight in." So Joshua, son of Nun, called the priests and said to them, "Take up the ark of the covenant of the Lord and have 7 priests carry the trumpet in front of it." He ordered the people, "Advance, march around the city with the armed guard going ahead of the ark of the covenant." When Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying 7 trumpets before the Lord went forward, bowing their trumpets, and the ark of the covenant followed them. The armed guard marched ahead of the priests who blew trumpets, and the rear guard followed the ark. All this time the trumpets were sounding, but Joshua had commanded the people, "Do not give a war cry, do not raise your voices, do not say a word until the day I tell you to shout, then shout." So he had the ark of the Lord carried around the city, circling it once. Then the Lord returned to the camp and spent the night there. Joshua got up early the next morning, and the priests took up the ark of the covenant. The 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets went forward, marching before the ark of the Lord and blowing the trumpets. The armed men went ahead of them, and the rear guard followed the ark of the covenant while the trumpets kept sounding. So on the second day, they marched around the camp and returned to the camp. They did this for 6 days. On the seventh day, they got up at daybreak and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner, except on that day they circled the city 7 times. The seventh time they went around, the priest sounded the trumpet, and Joshua commanded his people to shout, "For the Lord given you this city and all that is in it to be devoted to the Lord. Only Rahab the prostitute and all those who are in her house shall be spared, because she hid the spies that we sent. But keep away from the devoted things, that you will not bring about your own destruction by taking any of them. Otherwise, you will make the camp of Israel liable to destruction and bring trouble on it. All the silver and gold and articles of bronze and iron are sacred to the Lord and must go into his treasury." When the trumpet sounded, the people shouted, and the sound of the trumpet, when the people gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed and everyone charged in, and they took the city. They devoted the city to the Lord and destroyed with the sword everything living in it, men and women, old, young and old, cattle, sheep, and donkeys. Joshua said to the 2 men who had spied out the land, "Go into the prostitute's house and bring her out, and all that belonged to her, in accordance to your oath to her." So the young men who had done the spying went to bring out Rahab and her father and mother and brothers, who all belonged to her. They brought out her entire family and put them in a place outside of the camp of Israel. They burned the whole city and everything in it, and they put silver and gold and articles of bronze and iron into the treasury of the Lord's house. But Joshua spared Rahab the prostitute with her family and all those belonging to her, because she hid the men Joshua sent out as spies of Jericho. She lived among the Israelites to this day. At that time, Joshua pronounced his solemn oath, "Cursed before the Lord is the man who undertakes to rebuild the city Jericho, at the cost of his firstborn son while he laid its foundations, at the cost of the youngest while he set up its gates." So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout the land. Whew, that was a lot. But, so 3 through 6, what did we learn? 3 through 6. I'm going to put, wow, that's a lot. So, let's start off with the fact that the water, water as the Levites stood with the ark. And I want to also put in parentheses, these were flood waters. These weren't regular waters. When God is doing something, it always takes he's dramatic. He'd be like, "Okay, well, you're homeless, poor, whatever. I'm gonna give you a mansion. I'm gonna give you the opportunity to do this or that." It's like, we see you, God. Period. Period. God is a God of miracles. He does miracles. But yeah, I want to point out flood waters, because there's a reason why they said that. It wasn't just regular waters. It's not like they could just cross over. These are flood waters. So right when they touched the water, it piled up. God is a God. That's just miraculous. It was already miraculous for the waters to stop. But I think that sometimes God puts us in a position where it can only be him. Like that's the only solution. Like I can't even say it was me because there's no way that I could do this, right? So I'm gonna put miraculous signs come from extreme conditions. Boom. Um, the directions. Come on. Everybody who has a relationship with God that God speaks to, the directions that He gives are so exact that it's like, okay, I'm not just out here wandering. Like God's not gonna just out you have there wandering. He's gonna give you directions, but we have to make sure that we have our eyes open and our ears open to hear and to see the signs that God's showing us. The directions that God gives were slash are exact. My last thing is people like I watched this on VeggieTales when I was younger, and I remember like people laughing and stuff. And it's funny because God will sometimes gives us like directions that other people will laugh at, or He'll tell us to do something that other people laugh at, but it's still like His will. So we can't be afraid of being laughed at or being ridiculed when we're doing something that God has directed us to do. So don't be embarrassed by what God tells you to do, because it seems silly to walk around walls and think that they're going to just come tumbling down, but that's what God allowed to happen. Okay. Okay. So now we're on okay, period. Okay, period. Now we're on chapter 7. So it says, I think it's Achan. I'm gonna say Achanson. I don't know. But the Israelites acted unfaithfully in regard to the devoted things, and Achan, sons of Carmi, son of Zimri, son of Zerah, and the tribe of Judah took some of them. So the Lord's anger burned against Israel. Now Joshua said, and when he said took some of them, he meant like the stuff when they took over the land. Now Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Beth Aven to the east of Bethel, and told them, go up and spy out the region. So the men went up to spy out A. It's literally AI. So I don't know if it's like I or A. When they returned to Joshua, they said, not all the people will have to go up against Ai. Send 2 or 3,000 men to take it, and do not be weary, the people, for only a few men are up there. So about 3,000 men went up, but they were routed by the men of Ai, who killed about 36 of them. They chased the Israelites from the city gate as far as the stone quarries and struck them down on the slopes. At this, the hearts of the people were melted and became like water. Then Joshua tore his clothes and fell face down to the ground before the ark of the Lord, remaining there till evening. The elders of Israel did the same and sprinkled dust on their heads. Joshua said, also, Sovereign Lord, why did you ever bring these people across the Jordan to deliver us in the hands of the Amorites to destroy us? If only we had been content to stay on the other side of the Jordan. O Lord, what can I say? Now that Israel has been routed by its enemies, the Canaanites and the other people of the country will hear about this, and they will surround us and wipe out our name from the earth. What then will you do for our own great name? The Lord said to Joshua, stand up. What are you doing on your face? Israel has sinned and they have violated my covenant, which I commanded them to keep. They have taken some of the devoted things. They have stolen, they have lied, and they have put them with their own possessions. That is why the Israelites cannot stand against their enemies. They turn their backs and run because they have been made liable to destruction. I will not be with you anymore unless you destroy whatever is among you that is devoted to destruction. Go consecrate the people, tell them, consecrate yourself in preparation for tomorrow, for this is what the Lord, the God Israel says. That which is devoted among you, O Israel, you cannot stand against your enemies until you remove it. In the morning, present yourself, tribe by tribe. That tribe that the Lord takes shall come forward, clan by clan. That clan that the Lord takes shall come forward family by family, and that family that the Lord takes shall come forward man by man. He who is caught with the devoted thing shall be destroyed by fire, along with all that belongs to him. He has violated the covenant of the Lord and has done a disgraceful thing in Israel. Early the next morning, Joshua and Israel came forward by tribes, and Judah was taken. The clans of Judah came forward, and he took the Zerahs. He had the clan of the Zerahs come forward by families, and Zimri was taken. Joshua and his family come forward man by man, and Achan, son of Carmi, son of Zimri, son of Zerah, and the tribe of Judah was taken. Then Joshua said to Achan, my son, give glory to the Lord, the God of Israel, and give him the praise. Tell me what you have done, and do not hide it from me. He replied, it is true, I have sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel. This is what I have done. When I saw the plunder of the beautiful robe from Babylonia, 200 shekels of silver and a wedge of gold weighing in 50 shekels, I coveted them and took them. They are hidden in the ground inside of my tent with the silver underneath. So Joshua sent messengers, and they ran to the tent, and there it was hidden in his tent with the silver underneath. They took the things from the tent and brought them to Joshua, and all the Israelites spread them out before the Lord. Then Joshua, together with Israel, took the ancient son of Zerah, the silver, the robe, the gold wedge, his sons, his daughters, his cattle, his donkey, his sheep, his tent, and all that he had to the valley of Acre. Joshua said, why have you brought this trouble on us? The Lord will bring trouble on you today. Then all of Israel stoned him. The day after they stoned the rest, they burned them. And over Achan they heaped over a large pile of rocks, which remains to this day. Then the Lord turned from his fierce anger. Therefore, that place has been called the Valley of Acre ever since. Boom. So that was chapter 7. I'm just going to put, God knows. Everybody else in the land didn't know. Everybody else in the land didn't understand why they didn't win that battle. But God knows, and that gives a prime example of how some of our sins can impact others. You feel me? Okay, so it says, destroyed. The Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. Take the whole army with you and go up and attack the land, for I have delivered you into the hands of the king of Ai. His people, his city, and his people, his city, and his land. You shall do to Ai and his kings as you did to Jericho and its king, except that you may carry off their plunder and livestock for yourselves. Set an ambush behind the city. So Joshua and the whole army moved out to attack Ai. He chose 30,000 of his best fighting men and sent them out at night with these orders. Listen carefully that you are to set an ambush behind the city. Don't go very far from it. All of you be alert. I and all of those with me will advance on the city, and when the men come out against us as they did before, we will flee from them. They will pursue us until we have lured them away from the city, for they will say, they are running away from us as they did before. So when we flee from them, you are to rise from an ambush and take the city. The Lord your God will give it to you in your hand. When you have taken the city, set it on fire and do what the Lord commands. See to it that you have my orders. Then Joshua sent them off, and they went to the place of ambush and lay in wait between Bethel and Ai. To the west of Ai, but Joshua spent that night with the people. Early the next morning, Joshua mustered his men, and him and the leaders of Israel marched before them to Ai. The entire force was with him and marched up and approached the city and arrived in front of it. They set up a camp north of the land and to the west of the city. They had the soldiers take up their positions, all of those in the camp, to the north of the city to ambush the west of it. That night Joshua went to the valley. When the king of Ai saw this, he and all the men hurried out early in the morning to meet Israel in the battle at a certain place overlooking the Arabah. But he did not know that an ambush had been set against him behind the city. Joshua and all of Israel let themselves be driven back before them, and they fled toward the desert. All the men of Ai were called to pursue them, and they pursued Joshua and were lured away from the city. Not a man remained in the land of Ai or Bethel. who did not go after Israel. They left the city wide open and went in pursuit of Israel. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Hold out towards Ai." Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Hold out towards Ai, the javelin that is in your hand, for it is your hand that I will deliver you the city." So Joshua held out his javelin towards Ai. I really bothers me that I don't know how to say this, but whatever. As soon as he did this, the men in ambush rose quickly from their positions and rose forward. They entered the city and captured it and quickly set it on fire. The men of Ai looked back and saw the smoke rising against the sky, but they had no chance to escape in any direction, for the Israelites who had been fleeing towards had now turned back against their pursuers. But then Joshua and all Israel saw that the ambush had taken the city and that the smoke was going up from the city. They turned around and attacked the men of Ai. Oh, the men of ambush. Wait, I don't know what's wrong. The men of ambush also came out of the city against them, so they were caught in the middle with the Israelites on both sides. Israel cut them down, leaving them neither survivors nor fugitives. But they took the king of Ai and brought him to Joshua. When Israel had finished killing all the men of Ai in the fields, in the desert where they had chased them, and where every one of them had been put to a sword, all the Israelites returned to Ai to kill those who were in it. 12,000 men and women fell that day, all the people of the land. For Joshua, was it Josiah? For Joshua did not draw back the hand that was held out of the javelin until he had destroyed all who lived in Ai. But Israel did carry off for themselves the livestock and the plunder of the city, as the Lord had instructed Joshua. So Joshua burned Ai and made a permanent heap of ruins, a desolate place till this day. He hung the king of Ai on a tree and left him there until evening. At sunset, Joshua ordered them to take his body off the tree and throw it down to the entrance of the city gate. And they raised a large pile of rocks over it, which remains to this day. The covenant renewed at Mount Ebal. Then Joshua built on Mount Ebal an altar to the God of Israel, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded the Israelites. He built it according to what was written in the book of the law of Moses, an altar of uncut stone on which no iron tool had been used. On it they offered the Lord burnt offerings and sacrificed fellowship offerings. There, in the presence of the Israelites, Joshua copied on stones the law of Moses, which he had written. All of Israel, the aliens, the citizens alike, with their elders, officials, and judges, were standing on both sides of the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord, facing who carried it. The priests who were Levites, half of the people stood on Mount Gerizim, and half of them in the front of Mount Ebal, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, formally commanded, where he gave instructions to bless the people of Israel. Afterwards, Joshua read all the words of the law and the blessings and the curses, just as it was written in the book of the law. There was not a word that Moses had commanded that Joshua did not read to the whole assembly of Israel, including the women and the children and the aliens who lived among them. I don't think I have anything for that. So, wait a second. You know what? I do have something for that. So you see how in Jericho they marched around, but in this land of A or whatever, they actually fought, right? With a strategy that the Lord gave. So not every battle should be fought the same way. So the Lord may use like peculiar ways to help you win a battle. Some you're gonna have to go through like prayer. Some you may need fasting. You may have to do a little bit of both. You know, you might need whatever you might need, but I think that will give you God will give you strategies to defeat the enemy, and it's not always going to be the same way. Well, that's definitely something new this time around. Well, chapter 9. So it says the Gibeonite or the Gibeonite. I'm gonna say the Gibeonite. Now, when all of the kings west of the Jordan had heard about these things, those in the hill country and the western foothills along the entire coast of the Great Sea, as far as Lebanon, they came together to make war against Joshua and Israel. However, the people of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai, and they resorted to a ruse. They went as a delegation whose donkeys were loaded with worn-out sacks and old wineskins, cracked and mended. The men put worn and patched sandals on their feet and wore old clothes. All the bread of their supply was dry and moldy. They went to Joshua in the camp of Gilgal and said to him and the men of Israel, "We have come from a distant country to make a treaty with us." The men of Israel said to the Hivites, "But perhaps you live near us. How can we make a treaty with you?" "We are your servants," they said to Joshua. But Joshua said, "Who are you and where do you come from?" They answered, "Your servants have come from a very distant country because of the fame of the Lord your God. For we have heard of the reports of him, all that he did in Egypt, and all that he did to the two kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, Sihon, king of Heshbon, and Og, king of Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth. Ashtaroth. And our elders and our living our country said to us, 'Take provisions for your journey, go and meet with them, and say to them, we are your servants, make a treaty with us. This bread of rice were warm when we packed it at home the day we left to come to you. But now we see how dry and moldy it is. And these were the wine skins that we were filled were new, but see how cracked they are. And our clothes and our sandals are worn out by the very long journey.'" So they're lying. They're lying. The men of Israel sampled their provisions, but did not inquire of the Lord. They did not inquire of the Lord. They did not ask the Lord, like, is this for real? Then Joshua made a treaty of peace with them to let them live, and the leaders of the assembly ratified it by oath. 3 days after they made the treaty with the Gibeonites, the Israelites heard that there were neighbors living near them. So the Israelites set out on the third day to come to their cities, Gibeon, Kephirah, Beeroth, and Kiriath Jearim. Jearim. But the Israelites did not attack them because the leaders of the assembly had sworn by oaths by the Lord, the God of Israel. The whole assembly grumbled against the leaders, but all the leaders answered, "We have given them our oath by the Lord and the God of Israel. We cannot touch them now. This is what we will do to them. We will let them live so the wrath will not fall on us by breaking the oath we swore to them." They continue, "Let them live, but they will be woodcutters and water carriers for the entire community." So the leader's promise was kept. Then Joshua summoned the Gibeonites and said, "Why did you deceive us by saying we live a long way from you, while actually you live near us? Now you are under a curse. You will never cease to serve as woodcutters and water carriers for the house of my God." They answered Joshua, "Your servants were clearly told how the Lord your God commanded his servants Moses to give you the whole land and wipe out all of its inhabitants before you. So we feared for our lives because of you, and that's why we did this. We are now in your hands. Do to us what seemed good and right to you." So Joshua saved them from the Israelites and did not kill them. That day he made the Gibeonites woodcutters and water carriers of the community for the altar of the Lord at the place the Lord would choose, and that is what they are to this day. Boom. I knew I want to go. Boom. It says verse 14. So chapter 9, 14. It says, "The men of Israelites sampled their provisions, but did not inquire of the Lord." Did not inquire of the Lord. Did not inquire of the Lord. Ask God. God has the answer to literally everything. He has the answer to everything. And that's why it says we can't live. First off, it says we can't live on bread alone, but the bread of the word, period. But also we the flesh is, what is it? Deceptive. Flesh is deceptive. There's something that I want, there's like a certain verse. But basically, don't be deceived by your flesh. So flesh equals being deceived. Boom. Because They looked at it and was like, "Oh, this is for real. These provisions are for real. The bread is moldy. The wineskins are old. Blah 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 blah. The sandals are bogus." Whole time they were fooled. You gotta ask God before you start trying to make treaties and stuff. Anyway, now Adonai Zedek, king of Jerusalem, heard that Joshua had taken Ai and totally destroyed it, doing to Ai and its king that he'd done at Jericho and its king, and that the people of Gibeon had made a treaty of peace with Israel and were living near them. He and his people were very alarmed at this because Gibeon was an important city, like one of the royal cities, and it was larger than Ai, and all of the men were good fighters, so they couldn't like partner together to take over the Israelites. So Adonai Zedek, king of Jerusalem, appealed to Hoham, king of Hebron, Piriam, king of Jarmuth, Jabiah, king of. Okay, basically he's getting all these kings together. Okay. And he said, "Come up and help me attack Gibeon," he said, "because it's made peace with Joshua and the Israelites." Then the 5 kings of the Amorites, the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Leshish, and Eglon, or Ijlon, I don't know, joined forces. They moved up with their troops and took up positions against Gibeon and attacked it. The Gibeonites then sent word to Joshua in the camp of Gilgal, "Do not abandon your servants. Come up to us and quickly save us. Help us because the Amorites came from the hill country have joined forces against us." So Joshua marched up from Gilgal with his entire army, including the best fighting men. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them. I have given them into your hand. None of them will be able to withstand you." After an all-night march from Gilgal, Joshua took them by surprise. The Lord threw them into confusion before Israel, who defeated them in a great victory at Gibeon. Israel pursued them along the road up to Beth Horon and cut them off at Azekah. Makeda. As they fled before Israel on the road down to Beth Horon and Azekah, the Lord hurled large hailstones down on them from the sky, and more of them died from the hailstones than were killed by the swords of the Israelites. On that day, the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel. Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, "O sun, stand still over Gibeon. O moon, over the valley of Ajalon." That might be A. So the sun stood still and the moon stopped till the natives avenged itself on its enemies. It is written in the book of Jashar, the sun stopped in the middle of the day, in the middle of the sky, and delayed going down until a full day. There has never been a day like it before since the day the Lord listened to a man. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel. Then Joshua returned with all Israel to Gilgal. This is titled 5 Amorite Kings Killed. Now the 5 kings had fled and hidden in the cave of Makeda. When Joshua was told that the 5 kings had been found hiding in a cave at Makeda, he said, "Roll large rocks up on the mouth of the cave and post some men there to guard it. But don't stop. Pursue your enemies and attack them from the rear, and don't let them reach their cities, for the Lord your God has given them into your hand." So Joshua and the Israelites destroyed them completely, almost to a man. But a few were left, reached their fortified cities. The whole army then returned safely to Joshua in the camp of Makeda, and no one uttered a word against the Israelites. Joshua said, "Open the mouth of the cave and bring those 5 kings out to me." So they brought the 5 kings out of the cave, the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon. Then, when they brought these kings out, he summoned all the men of Israel, and said to the commanders, "Come here and put your feet on the necks of these kings." So they came forward and placed their feet on their necks. Joshua said to them, "Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, be courageous and strong. This is what the Lord will do to all the enemies that you're going to fight." Then Joshua struck and killed the kings and hung them on 5 trees, and they were left hanging on the trees until evening. At sunset, Joshua gave the order, and they took them down from the trees, and they threw them into the cave where they had been hiding. At the mouth of the cave, they placed large rocks, which are there to this day. That day, Joshua took Makeda. He put the city and its king to the sword and totally destroyed everyone in it. He left no survivors. He did to the king of Makeda as he done to the king of Jericho. The next part is titled Southern Cities Conquered. So then it says Joshua and all of Israel with him moved on from Makeda to Libnah and attacked it. The Lord also gave that city and its king to Israel's hand. The city and everyone in it Joshua put to the sword. He left no survivors there. He did this to the king as he done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua and all the Israelites with him moved from Lebanon to Lachish, and he took up positions against it and attacked it. Lord handed Lachish over to Israel, and Joshua took it the second day. The city and everyone in it put to the sword as he done in Libnah. Meanwhile, Haram, king of Jezer, had come out to help Lachish, but Joshua defeated him and his army until there were no survivors left. Then Joshua and all of Israel with him moved up from Lachish to Eglon, and they took up positions against it and attacked it. They captured it that same day and put it to the sword to totally destroy it and everyone in it, just as they done to Lachish. Then Joshua and all of Israel with him went from Eglon to Hebron and attacked it. They took the city and put it to the sword together with its king, its villages, and everyone in it, and they left no survivors. Just as at Eglon, they totally destroyed it and everyone in it. Then Joshua, all of Israel with him turned around and attacked Debir. They took the city, its king, its villages, and put them to the sword. Everyone in it was totally destroyed. They left no survivors. Then Joshua subdued the whole region, including the hill country, the Negev. I don't know what that is. Let me look that up. The western foothills, the mountain slopes, together all with their kings. He left no survivors, and he totally destroyed all who breathed, just as the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded. Joshua subdued them from Kadesh Barnea to Gaza, from the whole region of Joshua to Gibeon. All these kings and their lands Joshua conquered in one campaign, because the Lord of God of Israel fought for Israel. Then Joshua returned with all the Israel to camp at Gilgal. Whew, that was 10. So we got 11, 12, 13. Three more, y'all. We got it. We're going to power through it and talk at the end. Well, hopefully, unless something good comes up. Like real good. So it says, when Jabin, king of Hazor actually heard of this, he sent word to Jobab, king of Madon, to the kings of Shimron and Ashpath, and the northern kings who were in the mountains in Arabah, towards the Kinnereth in the western foothills of Naphtah Dor on the west, to the Canaanites in the east of the west, the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Jebusites in the hill countries, and the Hivites below Hermon in the region of Mizpah. They came out with their troops in a large number of horses and chariots, a huge army as numerous as the sand on the seashore. All these kings joined forces and made camp together at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them, because by this time tomorrow I will hand them over to Israel, slain. You are to hamstring their horses and burn their chariots." So Joshua and his whole army came against them, and suddenly the waters of Merom all attacked them. And the Lord gave them into the hand of Israel. They defeated them and pursued them all the way to the greater Sidon, in the Misrephoth Maim, in the valley of the Mizpah on the east, until no survivors were left. Joshua did to them as the Lord directed. He hamstrung their horses and burned their chariots. At that time, Joshua turned back and captured Hazor and put its king to the sword. Everyone in it put to the sword. They totally destroyed them, not sparing anything that breathed. He burned up Hazor itself. Joshua took all of these royal cities and their kings and put them to the sword. He totally destroyed them, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded. Yet Israel did not burn any of the cities built on their mounds, except Hazor, which Joshua burned. The Israelites carried off for themselves all the plunder and livestock in these cities, but all the people they put to the sword until they completely destroyed them, not sparing anyone that breathed, as the Lord commanded his servant Moses, and as Moses commanded Joshua, and Joshua did it. He left nothing undone, all that the Lord commanded Moses. Bro, I really need to I just need my neck to crack once. Didn't crack once. So Joshua took the entire land, the hill country, all the Negev, the whole region of Josh and the western foothills of Arabah, the mountains of Israel, with their foothills, from Mount Halak, which rises towards the sea, to Baal Gad, in the valley of Lebanon below Mount Hermon. He captured all their kings and struck them down, putting them to death. Joshua waged war against the kings for a long time, except for the Hivites living in Gibeon. Now, one city made a treaty of peace with the Israelites, who took them all into battle, for it was the Lord himself who hardened their hearts to wage war against Israel, so that he may destroy them totally, exterminating them without mercy, as the Lord commanded Moses. At that time, Joshua went and destroyed the Anakites from the hill country, from Hebron to Debir to Enam, from all the hill country of Judah, from all the hill country of Israel. Joshua totally destroyed them and their towns. No Anakites were left in the Israel territory, only in Gaza, Jath, and Ashdod did any survive. So Joshua took the entire land, just as the Lord directed Moses, and he gave it to the inheritance of Israel according to their tribal divisions. Then the land had rest from war. Ooh. The list of the defeated kings. Here are the kings of the land who the Israelites had defeated, who the territory took over, from the east of the Jordan, from the Arnon, George, from Mount Hermon, including the eastern side of the Arabah. Shahom. It's going to get ugly, y'all. Shahom, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, he ruled over Aror, the rim of Arnon George, in the middle of the Jabbok River, which was the border of the Ammonites, which included half of Gilead. He also ruled over the eastern Arabah, from the Sea of the Kenneth to the Sea of the Arabah, to the Beth Jeshmoth, and then southward below the slopes of Pisgah. In the territory of Og, king of Bashan, and one of the last of the Rephaites who reigned in Ashtaroth in Edrei. He ruled over Mount Hermon, Salakah, all the Bashan, to the border of the people of Jeshur, Makkah, and half of Gilead, to the border of Jeshon, king of Heshbon. I think I'm going to read the rest of this in my head. Okay. Okay, so we're just naming all the kings of the places that I was already struggling with, so I didn't want to like struggle back to 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 back. But you can see this is the list, y'all. So I was trying to put y'all through that. We're at the last chapter, y'all. So it says, land still to be taken. When Joshua was old and well advanced in years, the Lord said to him, you are very old, and there are still very large areas of the land to be taken over. This is the land that remains, all the regions of the Philistines and the Jeshurites, from the Shahor River on the east of the Egypt to the territory of the Ekron on the north. All of it's counted as the Canaanite. Boom. Ekron, from the south, all the land of the Canaanites, from the Arad, the Sidonians, as far as Ephek, and the region of the Amorites, the area of the Jebelites, and all of Lebanon from the east, from Baal Gad to Mount Hermon to Laban Hamath. So it's saying all the land that they haven't taken over yet. As for the this wasn't the last one. We have another one. Sorry. As for the inhabitants of the mountain of the regions of Lebanon to Misrapoth, Maim, this was all the Sidonians. I myself will drive them out before the Israelites. Be sure to allocate this land to Israel for an inheritance, as I have instructed you, and to divide its inheritance among the 9 tribes and a half tribes of the Manasseh. Says division of the land east of the Jordan. The other half of Manasseh, the Reubenites, the Jadites, received the inheritance of Moses that had given them from the east of the Jordan, as he, the servant of the Lord, had assigned it to them. It said it extended. Okay, so it's saying where it extends. So it said it extended from Aurora on the rim of the Arnon Gorge, from the town of the middle of the Gorge, including the whole plateau of the Medeba, as far as Dibon, and the towns of the Shoham king and the Amorites who ruled in Heshbon, out of the borders of the Ammonites. I really wish I had a map to show you guys, but I'm gonna have to bring a map next time, like next year. You feel me? It says, but the Israelites did not drive out the people of Jeshurun and Maacah, so they continued to live among the Israelites to this day. But to the tribe of Levi he gave no inheritance, since the offering made by fire to the Lord, the God of Israel, are their inheritance, as he promised them. Because remember, they don't get land because God is their inheritance. This is what Moses had given to the tribe of Reuben, clan by clan. And so it just names, it says the territory. So it just names in description like what he gave to them, but we don't have a map. So we can like to go over that part. So it just explains what he gave to Reuben by clan, by John by clan, Manasseh by clan. And then it ends with saying, this is the inheritance that Moses had given to them when he was in the plains of Moab, across the Jordan, east of the Jericho. But to the tribe of Levi, Moses had given no inheritance. The Lord, the God of Israel, is their inheritance, like I said, as he promised them. Okay, now this is the last chapter, which is chapter 14. It says, now these are the areas that Israelites received as inheritance in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, the heads of the tribal clans of Israel, allotted to them. Their inheritances were assigned by lot to the 9.5 tribes, as the Lord commanded through Moses. Moses granted the 2.5 tribes their inheritance east of the Jordan, but not had granted the Levites an inheritance among the rest. For the sons of Joseph had become 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. The Levites received no share of the land, but only towns to live in, with pasture lands for their flocks and herd. So the Israelites divided the land as the Lord commanded Moses. Now the men of Judah approached Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, maybe, the Kenizzite, said to him, you know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, at Kadesh Barnea, about you and me. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land, and I brought back him a report according to my convictions. This is when he sent out 2 spies, and only 2 of them came back with a good report. But my brothers who went up with me made the hearts of the people melt with fear. I, however, followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. So on that day, Moses swore to me, the land on which your feet have walked will be the inheritance of that you and your children forever, because you followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. Now then, just as the Lord promised, he kept me alive for 45 years. Since that time, he said to Moses, while Israel moved about in the desert, here I am today, 85 years old. I am still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I am just as vigorous to go out to battle as I was then. Now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard that the Anakites were there, and their cities were large and fortified. But the Lord helping me, I will drive them out as he said. Then Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave him Hebron as his inheritance. So Hebron belonged to Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, ever since, because he followed the Lord, the God of Israel, wholeheartedly. The land had rest. Then the land had rest from war. This is a prime example of knowing what God has promised you and coming back to him. So that's why we have to know the word. We got to know the word, because I have to be like, God, you promised me this, and so I'm actually going to hold you accountable to it, because that's what you promised me. And he knew what God promised him. So ask God for what. If you ask God for something, he says yes, you can come back to the Lord and be like, God, what happened? What do I need to do to get my land? And he comes up with him with confidence. It's not like he comes from like, oh, I remember, I could have sworn the other day, blah, blah, blah. He was like, no, remember what the Lord said? Remember what happened? And came up confidently. When you're confident in what you do in God, you'll get the results that you want, because you know it's of God. Period. So, yeah, I don't think I have anything other than that. So we're going to end with that. We're going to end with 14. Caleb. asking / demanding, give me my land. Demanding his land from his obedience / faith in taking. I'm gonna put receiving because you can't take something that God gave me. Yeah, you can. Receiving the promised land. So that's all for this morning. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'm gonna get ready for work and I'm gonna bounce. I will see y'all later. Period. Have a good day.